There's a split second, a second of silence when someone accuses you, calls you out, questions your intention, your worth, your character, and in that second, the ordinary person does what they've been trained to do. They defend themselves. I didn't mean it. That wasn't what I was trying to do. You got me wrong. I swear I'm not like that. It sounds noble, reasonable, just, but to Machiavelli, it is the instant you lose everything. For the moment you defend yourself, you acknowledge you are weak enough to need to, and on the playing field of power, perception reigns supreme. If they see you blink, they do not see a victim, they see blood. This is the cold, cruel law. Machiavelli recognized before anyone else. The man who defends himself lowers himself. The man who doesn't makes the world defend him instead. Let's make one thing clear. Defending yourself never persuades. What it does do is take the power out of your hands. Because when you're explaining your actions, you're operating in their terms. You're adopting their narrative frame. You're essentially saying, without even noticing it, you have the right to challenge me. And once they possess that, they control the narrative. Even if you are right, you still appear guilty because only the weak rush to explain. The strong, they allow the silence to burn. They allow the accusation to float unaddressed because they know the real move is this. Turn the accusation into a mirror. Make them question themselves. Make them seem too emotional. Make them seem obsessed, bitter, unstable, because the one who speaks first often loses control of the frame. And Machiavelli knew, whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. Most people defend themselves because they need to be understood. They think if they just explain it enough, clarify it enough, repeat themselves enough, they'll be vindicated. But that is a product of emotional weakness, not strategy. You don't desire clarity, you desire control. Clarity is for therapy, control is for power, and power doesn't derive from being understood. Power derives from being feared, respected, and untouchable. So, if someone accuses you of being arrogant, cold, selfish, manipulative, and you jump right up and say, "No, you don't understand," you've already lost, because now you're responding. Now you're demonstrating you care. Now you've put the ball in their court. And when you do that, you surrender the most Machiavellian aspect you possess, mystery. Consider the most powerful individuals you have ever met. Not the loudest, not the most popular, the ones who kept silence as a weapon, the ones who made you doubt yourself just by looking, the ones who, when attacked, never blinked. Machiavelli would say that to you. He who justifies surrenders. He who keeps silence makes others complete the blanks, and they usually overestimate him. That's the game. When you do nothing, they get nervous. They begin to question themselves. They seek confirmation from others and get none. Overnight, your power diminishes while theirs grows, because you've done the one thing no emotional being can abide by. You made them argue with themselves, and that's how you reverse the power. You allow their accusation to die in the echo of its own vulnerability. Let's drill deeper. You enter a room, someone throws shade, barely perceptible or overt, a shot at your success, your attitude, your history. Everyone glances to see how you'll respond. And this is your turn. Stay silent. No defense, no comeback, no smirk, but rather calm, absolute stillness. At that moment, you are unstoppable, because everyone in the room is now compelled to wonder, why didn't he respond? Does he know something we don't? Is he above this? Did that assault just make him stronger? You just turned the whole social dynamic, because folks aren't observing the accusation, they're observing your reaction, and silence, when served with presence, rings truer than any excuse ever could. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't learn politics, he learned psychology, and he knew one thing better than any other human being. Power is not what you say, it's what people believe you might say, but don't. Now here comes the biggest cold move of all. Sometimes you don't just brush off the accusation, you turn it on its head. They call you manipulative, smile, turn your head away from them, and say, if that's how you see it. Not defensiveness, not an apology, neutral coolness. What does happen? They scramble because they were expecting a fight. They were expecting to see you squirm. Instead, they find themselves holding their own weapon. That's when the guilt kicks in on their end. They begin to question whether they crossed the line, whether they made themselves look foolish, whether they now appear insecure, and would you know it? They do. You simply took the energy that was flung at you and had them bear it without moving a muscle. There's a time when silence is unbearable, not for you, but for the other who was waiting for some kind of reaction. That's when the roles are reversed. They thought they were playing the accuser. Now they find themselves naked and exposed as the one pleading for attention. And you just became something much stronger than innocent. You became untouchable. Machiavelli knew something that most of mankind will never know. Words are not to make things clear about truth, but to make things blurry. And when you attack them, overtly or covertly, they wish you to battle the fog. They want to engulf you in emotive explication, for the more you explicate, the less sure you sound. So let them fill the void instead. And what then? They overact, they beat about the bush, they begin to look desperate, emotional, unstable. You didn't say anything, but now they're the one on trial, because the crowd isn't hearing what is being said. They're observing who is calm and who is shaken. That's social power, and it doesn't come from being correct. It comes from being untouchable. Suppose you're at a business conference. Someone subtly criticizes you, says, "I'm not sure that approach is really well thought out," or "he always comes with these ambitious ideas." They are waiting for a reaction. They want you to bite. What does most everybody do? They lean forward, they expound, they demonstrate, they clarify, they get anxious. The room can smell it, but the Machiavellian operator, he leans back, he waits, perhaps even smirks. And if he does talk, it's not a defense, it's a redirect. "Let's hear your plan then." Now the attacker must perform, and the room turns. Now suddenly they are being judged. They feel pressure because silence from the confident is wordless accusation. It makes you feel small without you having to do anything. In romantic or intimate relationships, this is even more perilous. Suppose your partner tells you, "You don't care about me anymore." The ordinary person will freak out. They'll start making explanations, assurances, defenses, and in this way, they reinforce the emotional frame. But the Machiavellian way is the opposite. You don't brush them off. You don't debate. You allow the gravity of the accusation to hang. You observe them experience their own drama bounce around in the room. Then, calmly, you say, "That's not how I see it." Brief, earthy, no explanation, no defense. Now they're not sure. They second-guess their own tone. They wonder if they overreacted, because at that moment you had mastery of what is most important, the emotional pace, and who owns the pace, owns the frame. There's a deeper strategy, and it's colder still. Don't just stay calm when accused. Vanish. They insult you. Don't respond. Don't give in. Don't block them. But don't show them attention either. Make your lack of response hang like a mirror. Make them wait in the quiet of being ignored. This shatters individuals in two manners. They see that you didn't even consider them worth responding to. They get caught up in making up internal stories, and more often than not, it shatters their cool. Why? Because the ordinary individual exists on emotional validation. Even in fighting, they collapse when you take that away. They spin out. They post again. They speak to others. They attempt to bait a response. And with each successive try, they appear weaker, more fixated, more deranged, all while you sit there motionless. And that is when you emerge victorious. Not because you demonstrated anything, but because they self-imploded in an attempt to provoke you. This is where it gets advanced. Rather than protecting yourself when attacked, make their accusation appear to be a symptom of weakness. Someone calls you arrogant. Odd that confidence makes others so uneasy. Someone says you're manipulative. Only those who cannot be swayed claim so. Someone accuses you of being fake. Everyone says that when they are no longer receiving what they want, you don't simply deny the charge. You turn their accusation into their insecurity. And now they're the ones scrambling to defend themselves. It's not just a reversal, it's a power judo throw. You used their own emotional force and turned it into their public collapse. Machiavelli would call this the turn of the blade. Do not meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on his own blade. The world inducts you into defending your reputation, explaining yourself, clearing your name. But Machiavelli noticed the trap. He realized that once you pursue innocence, you concede guilt, so the real strategist never plays that trick. Instead, he looks too calm to be rattled, too lofty to care, too certain on his grounds to explain. And gradually, the people who attempt to bring him down begin to appear fragile, reactive, jealous, vulnerable, because the more you protest, the more it appears you do need to. But the more you ignore, the more deadly you are perceived to be, and that perception is where power is created. Most folks believe power is a matter of proving yourself, proving that you're right, proving that you're not what they claim you are, proving that you're superior to their expectation. But Machiavelli would laugh at this, because the moment you set out to prove anything, you'd already established the other person's right to judge you, and when you give somebody that validation, you give them your leash. Suppose you're with a group, a social group, dinner table, meeting, a public shot is thrown. You always act like you know everything. Oh, he's always like this. I guess being humble isn't your thing. What do most people do? They stiffen up. They try to deflect it with a laugh. Or worse, they offer an explanation, trying to make nice, and they believe they're saving face. But all they're actually doing is establishing that a hit was made. Now everyone's observing the defense, and that in itself makes the initial jab seem genuine. Here's what the Machiavellian does instead: hesitate, remain silent for merely 2 seconds, sweep the room not with menace, but with subdued amusement. Then, and only if needed, offer something calm, precise, and dismissive. You seem emotional today, or interesting take, or nothing at all, just a long, still gaze. What happens next is predictable. The attacker shifts, they fidget, they look for backup, they try to explain their joke. They sense the room's heat transferring to them, because your silence was saying something to the room more loudly than words ever could. You're not the one being judged, they are. In the world of the internet, it happens even quicker. Posts, comments, call-outs, DMs, individuals attempting to get a rise out of you. That's the reality. Machiavelli would sear into your brain in public opinion. Silence is guilt, unless your silence inspires fear. So the strategy is this: when attacked on the internet, don't defend, don't clarify, twist. You don't respond to the accusation, you steer the energy back into the audience. Example: someone calls you toxic or manipulative. Rather than making a tearful defense or lengthy clarification, you simply post, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you." What did you just do? You didn't defend. You reframed the accusation into a badge of strength. Now they are bitter. You are unbothered. And the audience, they start wondering who's actually in charge. That's not damage control. That's narrative dominance. Let's go even more scalpel. There are 3 weapons you can employ in lieu of defending yourself. Silence. The silent default, icy, potent, leaves them vulnerable. Deflection. Reframework the story without commenting on the jab. Precision cuts. Brief, piercing realities that close the game out instantly. Examples: a person tells you, "You're full of yourself." You reply, "Confidence upsets the insecure." A person tells you, "You're fake." You reply, "I don't owe you authenticity." A person tells you, "You think you're better than everyone." You reply, "No, I just don't think like everyone." These are not defenses, they're status assertions. They don't state, "I'm not guilty." They state, "You can't touch me." And that's the heart. The Machiavellian never asks to be perceived as good. He challenges people to perceive him as bad and strides taller because of it. When you do not defend yourself, something peculiar occurs to your enemies. They get crazy because they anticipated a fight, and all of a sudden they're fighting an apparition. They begin to escalate. They push harder. They get more dramatic. They reveal more of their insecurity. And the more they do, the higher you climb in the estimations of other people. Why? Because you've caused them to do their own destruction, and that's the Machiavellian ultimate goal. You don't kill your enemies. You allow your enemies to become obsessed with you, and thus destroy themselves. You believe misunderstanding is risky, but predictability is much worse. The misunderstood man is mysterious. The predictable man can be controlled. Those who are constantly trying to sort things out are desperate. Those who stay quietly misunderstood are feared. Machiavelli understood this. It is more noble to be feared than loved. If you are not able to be both, but more, it's more desirable to be unclear than to be predictable, because the unclear man is watchful. He eyes you. He does not act impulsively, and that means you are in control of the field. Let's break the last illusion. You don't win with a good reputation. You win with a strong one. The man who has a good reputation is supposed to be clean, soft, and conciliatory. The man who has a strong reputation, he's not necessarily liked, he's not necessarily trusted, but nobody will move against him lightly. That's what you get when you never stand up for yourself. Your reputation then is not what people think, but what they're afraid you're going to do next. That's how you turn the power around. You cease fighting for approval, and instead, you build an aura that makes people wary, because even your silence is perceived as a choice, and every move you don't make is a move in their head. The ultimate evolution isn't silence, it's aura, a presence so calm, so confident, so well beyond the trivial noise that accusations simply dissipate before they can stick. And this isn't achieved by being unemotional, it's achieved by being untroubled by design. Because when you've conditioned yourself not to explain, not to justify, not to prove yourself, you pass a boundary where your presence is the defense, and that's when power is easy. Consider the very few individuals in life that never justify themselves. They don't go on lengthy rants, they don't set the record straight, they don't battle their detractors, and yet others admire them more. Why? Because silence in the face of blame begets myth. It provokes interpretation, and the human mind, absent explanation, fills in the blank with brawn. People believe you have to be vicious. You have to know something that they don't. You have to be so self-assured in who you are. You don't even flinch when attacked. And that presupposition, that's what causes people to follow you. Machiavelli wasn't concerned with being good. He was concerned with being in control. And the person who never defends is always in control of perception, even when there are lies all around them. That's the paradox. The more you justify yourself, the lonelier you appear, because nobody feels the need to jump into it once you're already defending yourself. But if you are quiet, if you stand there in silence, unmoved, people begin to want to come to your defense. They chant, "That was uncalled for. He didn't deserve that. Why are you coming after him? He didn't even react, and you're still pressing." All of a sudden, they are your protector. And what is greater than defending yourself? Having someone else do it for you without request. That's Machiavellian bargaining power. Let the mob make your argument while you sit above the fray. Now you're not only admired, you're exalted. It doesn't occur overnight. You construct it, piece by piece, brick by brick, by being restrained, by opting for stillness instead of reaction, by never saying more than you have to. Begin here. Never correct the insults that obviously aim to stir. Let them speak. Let them resound. Your silence informs the room that the insult didn't even cross your mind. Answer indirect shots with tranquil bewilderment rather than offense. Is that how you see it? With complete calm. It breaks down the emotional force in their attack. Employ brief, closing sentences in lieu of defense. Noted. Okay. Think what you like. Time will tell. Each one closes the door. It does not throw open further debate. It ends the scene. Observe how you hold your face, your body, your eyes. The Machiavellian never winces, does not flinch or tense. Stillness is his shield, and the more still you remain as others lose control, the larger your power becomes quietly. When individuals are unsure how to get a rise out of you, they fear you because you then become unpredictable, not erratic, but impenetrable, a mirror reflecting their own instability back at them. Machiavelli would tell you, the most dangerous man is not the one who strikes first. It is the one who never must. You will come to a time when the attacks cease, not because you defended against them, but because individuals know they will be defeated before they begin. Your presence communicates, I don't defend. I allow others to self-destruct in an attempt to get to me. Strength and immunity are two different things. Strength still winces, still protests, still becomes emotional, even when it resists. Immunity, it doesn't even notice the punch. That's the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the fight. You win the fight by not having to fight it, by never having to reply. Because when you no longer go on defense, others stop regarding you as a person to be tried. You're not on their plane. You've transcended the public courtroom, and the only verdict that counts your own. Hereafter, you don't live in defense. You live in definition. You define your image. You define your tone. You define your silence, and others sense it. They sense the conviction in your eyes, the serenity in your stance, the threat in your silence. You're not fighting anymore. You're ordering, and that's when the room changes. The audience speaks less. Your foes quieten. Your name means something, not because you fought it, but because you never defined it. Never defend yourself, as a rule, is not never speak. It is speak only when it changes the power. When you do speak, it must feel like a move, not a reaction, because each time you don't justify yourself, each time you stand still while the world turns, you are the one thing they can't manipulate, a man who reports to no one,